Okay, good morning, everybody. This podcast uncovers the AutoPen, a device that replicates signatures and explores the media bias while questioning whether these issues should matter to you at all. I'm Charles Randolph, and welcome to Speak Online, where we will review the media coverage, check the spin, and seek out some good information. So, it's time to watch and reflect. First, just a note, I'm an Amazon associate, and recommending books and other sources of good information is my thing, so you can check the description below for access to that. We just finished up Jesus and John Wayne. Excellent book, fantastic book. Next up, we're going to do The Art of Game Theory. Since we're getting into a bit more politics, I think this might shed some light on some of the situations we might be experiencing and set a good foundation for some future reading. So, moving forward. Okay, initially in the media, people heard AutoPen, and what's the first thing that comes to mind? Electronic signatures. Well, that is not necessarily the case, and I did find a good piece online that gives a good description of the historical account of what the AutoPen is. So let's take a look, and we'll move forward.
But what exactly is an AutoPen? Put simply, it's a device that uses a pen to recreate signatures or handwriting, even if the, quote, signer is not in the room. President Obama apparently became the first president to use an AutoPen to sign an actual bill when he extended the Bush-era Patriot Act while he was in France, a move that caused a bit of a stir at the time.
Use of the AutoPen must be directed directly by the president.
But it's been used in the White House for decades, even centuries, for things like written communications and autograph requests. The Thomas Jefferson Foundation says our third president was known to use a precursor to the AutoPen known as a polygraph for making a copy of handwritten letters. President Harry Truman is often said to be the first president to use a fully robotic AutoPen in the 1950s. John F. Kennedy was said to be such a prolific user of the AutoPen that it became the subject of a book, The Robot That Helped Make a President. And Lyndon Johnson's use of the machine even made the cover of the National Enquirer in 1968. Regardless of how AutoPen has been used in the past, it's important to note that looking at signatures' digital copies in the Federal Register might not be the best way to see how a document was signed. The National Archives, which runs the Federal Register, telling fact-checker Snopes each new administration provides a digital signature file for the Federal Register, quote, which uses it to create the graphic image for all presidential documents published. NBC News asked the National Archives for comment and has yet to hear back. But that's why many Biden signatures would look the same, as would President Trump's signatures in the Federal Register, from both his first term and this one.
Okay. So one thing that I try and do is I try to make notes about claims and other pieces of good information that we should keep track of while we go through this. A couple things I noted is that it has been used for centuries, all the way back to Truman, Kennedy, and further. I think a good question would be at some point to consider is, are digital signatures better than this AutoPen? I mean, you do have an IP address, but that's a bit of a side quest, maybe another time. And also, we do know that President Trump has used this. So here is what's next. An article from the Wonket. Now, this is very biased and very slanted, and I think it's really important that we review these things so then we can pick up on common patterns of behavior that help us identify different things that show us that there is a slant to the reporting, because there's so much out there now. And now that you can just get a large amount of social capital, that is, quote unquote, a lot of followers, and then be seen as legitimate, it's a problem. It's a really big problem. So again, this is from the Wonket by Gary Legum, titled "Tyrant Idiot Thinks He Can Undo Biden Pardons Through Imaginary Sleepy Joe AutoPen Loophole." All right, not biased at all. Sounds like a good source of information, right? This is kind of funny. He put a little caption here with Trump while he was signing saying, "No AutoPen, you're the AutoPen." I don't know, it's kind of cute, right? Moving forward, here it starts. We can all be confident that President, DF, I'll say it that way, has been seething for 2 months over the last minute and preemptive pardons that his predecessor, Joe Biden, signed for various Trumpian bete noirs on his way out the door in January. The man never forgets anything that even reeks of a slight. Plus, he's loonier than a chihuahua on meth. Wow. You know, the fact that this is even being picked up on a news site is extremely sad. Extremely sad. So it is no surprise that late on Sunday night, the giant baby announced he had come up with a workaround to the problem of his not being able to wreak vengeance on, among others, Anthony Fauci and the January 6th Select Committee. Those pardons were allegedly signed by AutoPen. Okay, so we got the claim that because AutoPen was used in the past by Trump, all others. Now, we have a wonderful tweet by Donald J. Trump. I'm going to read it. Quote, the pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done by AutoPen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. Man, Trump, that is a huge claim. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Biden. So that is a claim. He didn't know anything about them. And I think that is the key claim right there. That's what people are going to run with. He knew nothing about them, and the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, those on the Unselect Committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me. Okay, changed topic a little bit. And many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without their knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. You know, when he speaks like that, I get this image of like an angry 3-year-old just spouting stuff off. It's hilarious, especially like with the, all caps. It's so poignant, so accentuated. Just gotta love it. Find it hilarious. But those are some huge claims made by Trump. This guy who's writing, who's obviously on the left, is just spouting stuff. I don't really see any good information yet here. Give him another shot moving forward. Well, in that case, let's have a list of everything in both Trump administrations that has been signed by AutoPen so we can declare them vacant, void, and of no further force or effect. Okay. That's not really the argument that he's making. The argument that Trump is making is that he had no knowledge of it. That's, I believe, where the primary claim lies. Who was the first to use an AutoPen, an example followed by each and every one of his successors. Are there any bills or executive orders or, oh God, the potential irony, pardons that one of Trump's aides signed with an AutoPen because President Tiny Fingers was too busy shanking chip shots into sand traps to be bothered? That's funny. And then the guy actually put a YouTube clip on here, if you can't see this, of, I'm assuming, Trump making a very bad shot. Seriously, man, you should tell people you were aiming for that bunker just to make the hole a little challenging. Now that we think about it, how many January 6th rioters did Trump pardon his first day in office, 8 weeks that feel like 80 years ago? 1,500 or so. Did he sign all 1,500 pardon documents manually? Because if he didn't, void, vacant, or no further force or effect. I think the fact, that's kind of a good claim. In a way, that's not a good claim. It's kind of a point. 1,500 signed by Trump. But again, that's really not what it's about. It's about, was he actually aware of it or not? That being Biden. You know, when I read this stuff, where individuals like this, and this is obviously biased on the left, right? It makes me think of a couple things. One, the power of speaking to a specific target audience. You know, hate and anger, it shares. It is proven that people are more likely to share things that anger them than things that necessarily make them happy. It is a strategy in and of itself. And two, because of the issues that we have now with taking people seriously who have gained social capital but lack any credibility, I would say, or reasons about why we should actually listen to them, there should be some sort of banner or link to like an individual's curriculum vitae, their resume, something that can provide people with an actual reason to listen to them, an actual reason, or at least be able to discern if this person is a good source of information. Because these are just people online, or I mean, they're behind a desk somewhere, like I am, writing. And in this case, just spouting stuff off. It's just, I don't really consider this of any substance. Okay, moving forward, you may be wondering if the question of whether presidential signatures done with auto pens are legally valid has ever come up before. As it happens, the Office of Legal Counsel under George W. Bush wrote a 30-page opinion on the subject back in 2005. The conclusion? It's legal. Shut up. Here he quotes it. The president need not personally perform the physical act of affixing his signature to a bill he approves and decides to sign in order for the bill to become law. Rather, the president may sign a bill within the meaning of Article 1, Section 7 by directing a subordinate to affix the president's signature to such a bill, for example, by auto pen. So you can have proxies. Take that, copy it. That might come up. Okay, and that was regarding George W. Bush. Wish he would have provided a link to the full document, but I'll take what I can get right now. Moving forward, those are the first two sentences of the opinion. You don't need to read past that, or at least the aide who has to present the conclusion to Trump with small words and finger puppets doesn't have to read past that, since we don't think reading isn't in his skill set. If President Jesus, I'm not even going to say that, would like to order his own OLC to withdraw that opinion and pen a new one that aligns with his own personal view, that he should, there's nothing here. You may also be wondering, can a president even revoke a pardon signed by one of his predecessors? Okay, that's just asking stupid questions. Nonetheless, they're quizzing nothing. Oh my gosh, how can you write so much about absolutely nothing? Okay, here's a quote. Another reason this issue may be popping up now is this story from the New York Post. A week ago, it seems the Heritage Foundation claims many of Biden's executive orders were signed with an auto pen, thereby making them invalid for some reason. The only problem, as Newsweek explains, is that the Heritage is looking at online and digitized versions of the documents, not the originals. Newsweek says that might explain the discrepancy. Okay, this is an important one. One thing with the news, there should be about like a 3 to 4 sentence opening paragraph, the introduction of an individual involved in the story, a quotation, maybe a sentence recapping that, and then another, and so on and so forth with a small conclusion. That's why, for example, here, where there actually is something of slight value in this article, there's a block quote. That's where it's going to be at, if at all. Getting back to the point here. So the Heritage Foundation, that is a big one. Heritage Foundation. This is where the story is also coming from. If you don't know why this is important, the Heritage Foundation is the group that wrote Project 2025, which is the agenda for the Republican Party. It is a theocratic fundamentalist agenda, and I suggest that everyone look into it. It is significant and a bit scary for all people, no matter what your political affiliation is. Big changes, big changes. So the fact that the Heritage Foundation is involved in this is very interesting. I will get into the reasons why a little bit more here in a bit. So this quote from Newsweek. It's claiming signed by AutoPen. Okay, you know what else might explain it? The Heritage Foundation is full of blank. That is the simplest and therefore correct explanation. And that was the last sentence. Wow, that was great. Fantastic work. You really added something to the public sphere and knowledge. Thanks for being here, idiot. Okay, now here is another one. This is President Trump, AutoPen, pardons null and void. This one should be on the right. 1 second, coffee sip. Fantastic. There's not enough coffee in this world. I got to get an affiliate for that. Maybe I can get some free coffee. That'd be cool. Anyway, back to it. This is from, yes, this is a biased article on the right, from the Geller Report. All right. Well, Miss Geller, I'm going to make a note that I want to look into you. What are your qualifications, if any? I'm really making a point on that because sources of information should be good sources of information, and you should either show how you reached a conclusion or where you got that information by sources in your writing, or you should have some credentials in order to speak upon a topic as an authority. And we have moved away from the respect of authorities in their sphere because of certain agendas that have been pushed in the media, which don't have time to get into right now, but sorry, I have a habit of getting on little side quests when I talk. Getting back to it, the Geller Report by Pamela Geller. Got a nice little picture of an AutoPen. President Trump said, they are null and void because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place. What they did is criminal. Lawyer up criminals. That really can't be the first sentence of this article. Is that, okay, well, sorry, I was a little confused just because of the fact that they have an image at the start of the article, a sentence, and then a whole bunch of media and ads all the way down it, because that's really all this is. Nothing but ads. This is nothing but just posting BS online with backlinks and ads. Anyway, this is what they have. Trump says AutoPen voids Biden's pardons for January 6th committee. Again. Oh my God, what the hell is wrong with these people? Okay. Biden accused. Okay, I got to say one thing about this. Let me zoom out on why so you can actually see this. Okay. So you have a title, right? President Trump, AutoPen pardons null and void. You look at this, you got an image, you're like, okay, the article should begin. You got one sentence. And then you have absolutely nothing for over a page. Absolutely nothing. Then they post related. AutoPen was running the country during Biden years. Another link after that. Another link after that. Another link after that. Trump says, and then they have a different one, a different article that actually appears to be some sort of an article. Trump says AutoPen voids Biden's pardons for January 6th committee. So here you have an article down here that has nothing, well, is not the same article that is stated up here. What they are doing, folks, is they're using the power of search engine optimization to drive traffic. You're messing up my moment, McAfee. What the hell is wrong with you? Go bug someone else. Back to it. Jesus. But by that I mean with every image or headline in a blog post, an article, in a YouTube video, anything that's uploaded, you can put in tags, keywords tags that will drive search engines to choose your content possibly above others or drive traffic to your website. If you are doing trending news like this is, the more links, backlinks, tags, search terms that you can get in there, the more likely it will drive traffic to you. Not because it's a good source of information, but because you're good at search engine optimization, which is extremely sad, because you're just going to get this, which is absolutely nothing. So let's read the article about the article that it's not about, but we'll read it anyway. Trump says AutoPen voids Biden's pardons for January 6th committee. Biden accused of using AutoPen to sign pardons executive orders. Heritage Foundation recently released a report into alleged AutoPen use. AutoPen use has historically been found to be constitutional by Millis Hayes, News Nation, March 17th, 2025. Trump, Biden's alleged AutoPen usage voids January 6 committee pardons. Morning in America video player is loading. Not sure how to find News Nation on your TV? Find your channel here. Get 24/7 fact-based, unbiased news coverage with the News Nation app. News Nation, President Donald Trump said former president... Okay, so this is what it is. They took a YouTube video, some piece of coverage. They either downloaded the transcript, okay, of that video, or they downloaded the video, uploaded it into something like Premiere Pro, and got the transcript from it, and then they just posted that on their site. They didn't actually do anything. They didn't actually think about anything. They wrote a title that will piss you off and get you to click on it, and then gave you nothing. That's all it is. And it's people like this that really cause a problem. So, Miss Geller, I'm gonna make a note to talk some future trash about you. Now, it's just so misleading. So misleading. Okay. Now, from all that, I'm going to get a little bit of an overview of Ground News, a source that I use, which if you check the link below, you can get 40% off with my link to a new subscription. So please help support the channel and check that out. Here are some good points. This is a good center summary of everything. That Donald Trump is accusing Joe Biden of not physically signing key pardons, claiming they were signed with an AutoPen, according to analysis from the Heritage Foundation. Legal experts affirm that pardons signed by an AutoPen are valid under U.S. law, contrary to Trump's claims. Professor Aaron Delaney stated that Trump's attempt to rescind Biden's pardons would violate constitutional norms. Biden issued several pardons on January 19th, including those for Hunter Biden and Dr. Anthony Fauci, just before Trump took office. Good stuff. I want to go back to this Heritage Foundation. See if we can't pull up that actual Heritage Foundation report on AutoPen. Boom, that did it. That did it. Okay, here we are. So let's see how they write this, how it sounds, what it looks like in comparison to some of the biased media that we just read. See if there's any similarities in the language. So this is to the public from the Oversight Project, March 17th, 2025, AutoPen and Biden's mental decline. You see that all right? There we go. Introduction. The United States Constitution vests numerous powers in one man and one man alone, the President of the United States. These powers include signing or vetoing bills, signing or vetoing orders, resolutions for certain legislative votes, nominating and commissioning officers, and granting reprieves and pardons. In all these instances, the president's personal action is required. That is, he shall perform some action. These mandates are exclusive to the president. Okay, so that's going to be one of their key points right here. He shall perform some action. In other words, he should be physically doing something and involved. So physically doing something. All right, they got a few things cited here. I can't believe they spent so much time looking into this. Moving forward, therefore, it is well established that the president cannot delegate these decisions to anyone. Okay, so nothing by proxy is what they're saying. The president affixing his wet signature not only signifies consent, but is the legally required act. Okay, so that's another one. We got the wet signature. That's key. But what happens when the president himself does not manually sign documents that exercise powers that belong only to him? What happens if he uses a proxy or administration staff uses a machine or technology to automatically affix the president's signature to documents that fulfill his constitutional duties of bicameralism and presentment or issue pardons? And most critically, how does that analysis change when the president lacks the mental and physical capacity to fulfill the duties of his office or is under mental or physical impairment? So that's the big one, the physical mental impairment. That is going to be a keynote. At its core, the long-standing historical practice that the president affix his wet signature to acts of Congress and clemency warrant stems from the interconnected issue of authority and authenticity. So there is an issue with that statement, is because we have found out through that other source of information that it is a historical practice also to use the auto pen, and has done used quite a bit. The Constitution vests the execution of executive powers, the signing of bills into law, and the awarding of pardons and clemency in one person, the president. He is the only person who alone composes a branch of government. He may solicit advice and information, but the final decision and responsibility rests solely on his shoulders. Since the founding of the United States, a key check to ensure that the acts of a unitary executive are actually his is the requirement that important official documents bear his wet signature. That is not a pure ministerial requirement, but a core safeguard against fraud and usurpation of authority. I love that word, usurpation. After all, when dealing with the president, one wants stringent safeguards against fraud and usurpation of authority. They do too, apparently, even if they add a little extra work, precisely because he is the president of the United States, clothed with immense power. Okay, how long is this thing? Like 30 pages. Okay. The reason why I'm reading it a little bit slower than I usually would is for a reason. One, because the Heritage Foundation has an agenda, and often agendas are not explicitly stated. Rather, they come out in themes. In other words, the message isn't the message. The theme is the message. And, these individuals, whether we agree with them or not, they are intelligent people who know how to push an agenda, especially over time. And to parse through that stuff takes a little bit more critical thinking than some person on the left or the right writing biased media, completely biased media, just bashing other people, picking out a few points rather than actually doing some analysis on it. Here's something interesting. Methodology and clemency warrant, AutoPen use statistics. On March 6, 2025, the Oversight Project announced our investigation into Biden administration's use of the AutoPen. So here's something really important. This happened March 6th, okay? The tweet didn't come out until after that. That means there is a direct link between the Heritage Foundation and President Trump, okay? And I can tell you what one of those are. The individual who wrote Project 2025, I believe, is now the head of one of his main departments. Okay, historical background of White House cover-ups of presidential decline. Okay, so here they talk smack about how the White House is covered up different presidents who have declined. Here's President Biden's cognitive decline. They list this all out. Yeah, we get it. AutoPen. Okay. What I would say is one of the key things to take away from this is, why is this even a story in the first place? They say it's this questioning of physical impairment. Well, if you're really questioning that, why take time to do all of this oversight project and all this kind of stuff, right? Why not just take a list of everything that was signed with that AutoPen and walk up to someone, for example, the guy who supposedly signed it, and say, hey, dude, bro, did you mean to sign this? Because there is paperwork with every single signature on it. I mean, these are people walking out of jail. It's not like, they're sneaking out the back door. This is, again, public information. It's not hidden away. Everybody can see this. The Heritage Foundation's seen it, and they can check. There's no way to literally prove this. I mean, all he has to say is, I know. They're not going to do it. I mean, unless you're going to go so far as let's say you went back to Kennedy, right? Be like, hey, Kennedy, when you were too busy, doing your thing that you do on the weekends, was it not okay that I hit that button to sign that signature to let my bro off? I mean, it's just crazy that it's even a story, because it's going to go absolutely nowhere. It's going to go absolutely nowhere. And then another big point, one common thing with propaganda, especially when you are trying to push an agenda, and in this case, in America, an extremely big theme that comes from Russian propaganda that is very bad for us. And I know I'm linking this to the Heritage Foundation, but the fact that it has been demonstrated as bad for us because Russia uses it against us should say something about those within the country that use it against us to get their own political agenda across. But a common tactic used is to sow distrust within our democratic institutions, because by sowing distrust in democratic institutions, it weakens, one, our social cohesion, just our unity together, and it builds further polarization and separation amongst the people. And, on a short-term scale, it doesn't make a difference, but on a long-term scale, as these things build and build and build, over generations, parents starting to tell their kids, you can't trust this, you can't trust this, you can't trust this. Well, then why should we even have a democracy anyway? If that's what you're hearing the entire time you're, being raised, you're going to believe that all of a sudden, maybe we should try something different. Maybe we should get rid of this democracy thing and do something different for a while. It's a long game. So, you know what? One more thing. I'll take a moment to knock one of my arch nemesis, Tim Pool, always a source of bad information. And here's a good example.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a correction on so much of what I was talking about the other day. I apologize. I was not aware of the extent of the auto pen scandal. My assumption, based on reports I had read and commentary, and this is my fault, was that auto pen in the Biden auto pen scandal referred to apps that you can apply your signature. And I'd seen so much commentary on this, I didn't actually look into it. Now that the story's breaking.
Okay, I want to make one note because I can actually understand that immediate association. I get that. The problem is this guy is not just commenting loosely on this topic or like in an unbiased fashion, in a calm way. This guy is saying, you know what? We got to go back. We got to lock Biden up. You know what? For all we know, the people that he signed off, they could have been killers, murderers, rapists, all these horrible things. And in fact, screw it. Let's just take all the Democrats, throw them in there because who, even needs them? Let's just take Trump. Trump, you got it, dude. Sign some more executive orders, blah, blah, blah. It's not he sows hate and discontent in a very visceral way, and it has negative effects. So a mistake is you have to hold certain people with a certain amount of an audience to a higher level. You really do, because he probably told that to a couple million people, okay? That probably got disseminated down to another couple million people at least. How many of those million people do you think showed up to watch this show for a correction? A quarter, maybe? Think about the effect that has. It's significant. And that is why we have to hold media figures accountable. And we need a new system with what's currently going on. And it should have been done a long time ago, but this is new technology and we're evolving with it. But it's something to really consider. Let's listen to a little bit more.
We are talking about quite literally a machine that holds the pen. This is not digital. So let me give you the quick breakdown of the story. Trump the other day claimed that Joe Biden's pardons are void because they were signed via auto pen. Now the corporate press is running these stories saying Donald Trump admits to using auto pen. Now, the first commentary I saw on this was people generally just saying it was being signed with an app like DocuSign. And so I didn't even think about it. New reports have come out, and I've actually been digging into the story.
What's amazing is this guy has a whole crew, probably at least 5 or 6 people. And none of these people took a minute to actually look into what an auto pen is or even read the article that came out, right? Isn't that sad? And yet these people are making millions of dollars. I don't know if it's still millions. They were making millions when they were funded by Tenet Media, who was being funded by Russia and licensing his content, but it says a lot.
And shocked as I was to discover, for those that don't know, Joe Biden arguably signed almost every single document using a machine it's got arms. I kid you not. I did not know this. It's a literal machine that holds a pen. And you press play and the pen moves on paper to make it seem like it's actually a wet signature. And that was another issue with this, was that all of the commentary presented made it seem as though they were talking about using apps like DocuSign. And even other commentary said the pardons must have a wet signature, as if to imply ink was not used.
He is the only person I heard from it. Okay. Anyway, I think that about wraps it up. I like to hit on the responsibility that people in the media have, to the public. We need to hold people accountable for what they say. That is one of the issues. It is a good thing that we have independent media, but we are losing our faith in places of good information due to themes that have been driven out into the public sphere and therefore their discourse. And we are losing good source information, and we don't know where to turn. And we are turning to people that provide us with an emotional engagement rather than some type of participatory action where they seek out good information together or provide it to the public. So anyway, that's my last ramble. I hope everybody got some good information here. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Check us out on Spotify, please, as well. And if you are wanting good information, check out the description. There is a link there to get 40% off Ground News for a subscription. They are great. I use it often, and you will see it used here on the show in order to check the spin on the left and right and come to a reasonable conclusion. All right. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully get to see you tomorrow. Take care.